Welcome back to another installment of Fellowship of the Rinks. He's Joe Smith of The Athletic, bringing you all the insider info on your Minnesota Wild and Gophers hockey. And I'm Scott, simply here to maintain production, but appreciate you all joining us wherever and whenever you are listening. Joe, we have a name now. It feels a little different now. It's more real.
It's great. I think it's funny that two relatively creative people takes a while to come up with a name. It's not like you're naming.
Yeah, it is.
Not like you're naming your firstborn child, which you did, and that I will be doing eventually here. But it's cool to have it. I think both of us are Lord of the Ring enthusiasts. My wife and I just got back from New Zealand a few weeks back from Hobbiton, did the Hobbiton tour around, so it was right on the brain there. And I think anybody who follows hockey, covers hockey, knows there is that fellowship and bond and friendship that anybody in the state of hockey doesn't have to be a Wild player and Gophers. So there's that connection that kind of crosses all networks there. So it seemed like a pretty good fit, and it's kind of fun too, I think.
No, definitely. And it's funny to me too that, it'd been a little over a year of us like just grabbing beers, shooting the shit about hockey. And then all of a sudden it takes you saying you're going on a trip to New Zealand. And I'm like, I got to ask this question, a very delicate question. Will this be part of your trip? And you're like, oh, absolutely. I'm like, okay, add one more arrow to the quiver. This is great. And it's funny that you bring up the name of kids too, because I just saw a video pop up recently where it's basically someone explaining like, wow, I never realized how many people I hate until I decided to start working through names for my kids. And it is the most true thing ever. Like, I'm sure you guys are going through it right now. There's so many names that either Laura thought was great or I thought were great. And the other one's just like, hard no, here's why. Let me explain this mutant of a human to you. And it's like, oh, okay, fair enough.
Yeah, luckily we have a list in our notes pad on our phones with like 12 from each side, and like I'm casually putting X's or stuff next to them or not. And we won't have a baby without a name, at least, but it'll be some consternation towards the end there. And if we have to go through Hobbit character names, then we'll have to do it. Our dog is named Sam after Samwise Gamgee and Samuel Tarly from Game of Thrones. So the mixture
too. Okay, this is
because the awkward but loyal companion. Just always by your side, and just so I think we're kind of sad. We've already used Sammy. We can't have two Sammys in the household, so that one's out.
Well, you probably also don't want to name your kid the awkward loyal companion. Like, that is such a fitting name for a dog. And I actually never connected the dots that like Sam in both shows is absolutely the exact same character in a lot of senses.
Yeah.
Now I got to wonder, are there other shows that are along the same, fantasy type realm where there's a Sam? I'm going to have to do some Googling into that. Going off Game of Thrones though, if you had a girl, be pretty badass to just say a girl has no name.
Girl has no name, or you can name her like Daenerys or Cersei. Be a queen right off the bat.
The one Game of Thrones name that I actually think is really cool. So feel free to steal it if it's a girl. But I think Arya is actually a really cool name.
Yeah, no, I think Arya out there. I think we have Shay as one of our names.
Nice.
Up there, May, and don't want to give it all away so people can't steal it. But that's it's going to be exciting, and obviously you can wait till the last minute, and you can just wait till you see the baby to give that person the name. So we will leave with one, and we will gladly promote it everywhere.
Nice. Yeah, we had to lie to people for a little over 3 months and say, yeah, we've got a short list, but haven't decided yet. Like, we knew we're not going to play the game of telling people and then having someone either ruin it for us because they said like, oh, really? That name? Like, I've seen that happen way too many times to other people. Or like you say it and they're like, oh, that's actually a name that we're going to use. Like, damn it. Okay. So wait until they're a real human and then you kind of throw it in and it's all good. But we got through it. I don't even know what the process will be like if we do it for a second, but we'll see. It'll all be good. But None of you are here to hear anything about my kid or his name, or I mean, maybe I'd love it if some of you are here for some of the Game of Thrones and Lord of the Rings nerdery, because we will definitely be implementing that moving forward. But brass tacks, let's talk Minnesota Wild hockey here, Joe. And you actually went on the most recent road trip here, and it was an eventful one with the Edmonton Oilers and the Seattle Kraken. I mean, what can you bring to us, both on ice and from the team, just on the road trip in general?
Well, it was a huge week for them, no doubt. Like they knew it'd be a tough week, having Vancouver on Monday, back to back in Winnipeg on Tuesday, and then the two other Western Conference, one Seattle Kraken, the team that they're kind of fighting for a playoff spot. So, I think it was kind of almost the best case scenario to win 3 out of 4 there, with the one loss in Winnipeg. But you saw a lot of things coming together that really have made this stretch really good for the Wild. The top line, again, Matt Boldy's playing a really mature game. Him and Kaprizov and Eriksson Ek, the irreplaceable player on this team, have been terrific. And they've been really, like John Hynes said, like they're not just scoring points, they're playing the kind of style that the whole team needs to play. Their commitment and buy-in, and they're starting an identity for the group. And that kind of like leads down to the rest of the team. So they're helping carry the team. And then you saw Gustafsson and Fleury put in back-to-back really good starts. And now that's going to be really important because they're not going to make the playoffs and catch Nashville and St. Louis if Fleury and Gustafsson are having below 900 save percentage, which they have had for most of this year. I think Hynes said like 920 is kind of where you want to be in a game, at least to give yourself a chance. And on Friday, in a game where the Oilers scored 2 power play goals and you have McDavid and Draisaitl, Gustafsson was one of his best starts of the season, and be able to make some saves, especially in the third period when the Wild were getting kind of caved in a bit. So sometimes you need goalies to make those timely saves and steal you some points, which I think Gustafsson did on Friday. And then Fleury on Saturday, they had a big cushion in the game, so led by the power play and 5-on-3. But he made some, a key breakaway save when it was 2-1 in the first period. There was a shorthanded breakaway on Tanev that he made a stop there. In the second period, 5 saves in the penalty kill. So I think you're seeing a team that's kind of realized what kind of style they have to play and what kind of buy-in they need from everybody in order to be successful. You can't just play the game you want to play. You have to play the way that the team needs you to play in order to have success. And that's why I think Matt Boldy has been doing so well, and it's why it's led to the rest of the team.
Yeah, I mean, every time he goes out there and keeps doing the thing, and I just keep going back. I think that's now 8 games since Bill Guerin was named GM of Team USA, and he's got 7 goals, 7 assists. That's not too bad for your initial tryout. I know we got a couple of years from to build up to it, and there's been concerns in the past with Boldy's consistency, right? Like there's ups, there's downs. Are you seeing anything different that leads you to believe that maybe the streakiness could fade?
I think possibly. Sometimes it just clicks for a guy, whether it's a meeting with a coach or just realizing and reinforcing with positive results that I'm really good when I play this way, and we win when I play this way. And I think the last month or so, remember that one game in Chicago out of the break when they played really poor and they still won, and John Hynes was like, too many passengers in this lineup, and he was pointing to the top 6, right? He wasn't talking about Connor Dewar there, and the next game he put those 3 guys together, and ever since they've all played that north-south game, committed. And the one knock on Boldy over the times, he's incredibly talented and he's got a great shot and he can skate, he has the size, is that he wasn't consistent, and B, wasn't driving to those areas and playing more of a north-south. He was going east-west, trying to be too cute. Maybe too many games he was maybe not as strong on board battles and that thing. And now you're seeing all 3 of those guys playing that same way. It's kind of like Eriksson Ek plays every single shift, right? And when Boldy plays with that kind of hard skill, as Hynes calls it, right? Could be a really dominant player in this league. So if this clicks and this is the turning point and this is who he is the next year or two, it will be really hard for Bill Guerin to say, hey, he can't fit in this USA lineup. So, but the Wild also don't go on a playoff run at any point without a guy like that playing like this. So either way, it's a good sign for them as they are now, as of this recording, 4 points back of Nashville for the final playoff spot with another huge week. Nashville on Thursday and St. Louis on Saturday. And Thursday's game might be one of the bigger regular season games they've had in a long time. That's a big swing game for them.
I mean, it's a swing month looking ahead, too. If we get ahead of ourselves a little bit and look at March, I mean, you look at the teams that they're going to have to beat to get that last wild card spot. And that's assuming that one of the teams above doesn't fall off. But so far, all indications are we've got 5 teams fighting for that last spot. And you've got 3 matchups with St. Louis, who you're fighting with. You've got 2 with Nashville in March. And of course, the Nashville match coming up. Like, there's a lot of ground now to like really bolster your chances or completely deflate them. Like, in your mind, looking at the road ahead, how realistic is a playoff bid for this Minnesota Wild team?
I think it's realistic, no doubt. I mean, it's one, they have those matchups with the teams that they're chasing, right? And 2, they have one of the more favorable schedules down the stretch. They have 3 against the San Jose Sharks. I think they play the Chicago Blackhawks. They have a couple against Arizona, which is fading right now. Probably going to be a seller at the deadline in a couple of weeks. They do have some, tough games here and there. Like, they'll be in Colorado next week around the trade deadline and a back-to-back situation. So they do have some tougher games, but as far as they played all the best Eastern Conference teams already, they're through some of the top teams in the West. So I think this could be a chance, if they play consistent like they are and they get the goaltending, that they can go a little bit of a run here. And, a 4-point swing is pretty easy to do when you play those teams head to head. So the key is not dipping into a couple of different losing streaks, because time eventually will run out here.
For sure. And I mean, critical to that path, as you already kind of alluded to, Eriksson Ek, I think I can safely say that the collective Minnesota fan base basically held their breath for about 2 minutes there and have now let out a nice sigh of relief. We're pretty comfortable here. Eriksson Ek, no health issues as of today.
As of today, and by the time this comes out, we'll already have a game against Carolina, of course. So
should caveat that we're recording this on Monday.
But yeah, John Hines said after the game there shouldn't be a problem with him going forward, and obviously it's there was some pain there, and it didn't look good at the time. But like, you're right, he's the most irreplaceable guy on this team, and he's an anchor of that top line. So for him to go would be a kind of another kick in the gut for them this year. Every time they started to get really rolling, like in December, that game in Winnipeg, they lost Gustafsson and they lost Kaprizov, and went down from there. So for them to make this run and be so close, and all of a sudden before the deadline and get another big injury, would be pretty much a crushing blow, I think, to this group.
And tell me if you've heard this before, but I know we just dropped another Marc-Andre Fleury hit for the Athletic, and all indications are he's not really interested in leaving.
He's not. And like, it's not surprising to me, because I think we've gotten the vibe that as long as the Wild were in the race, that he wants to see it through. And so after Saturday's game, this kind of got him on the side there after the scrum, and like, hey, like, the team's rolling, you're feeling good. Like, is it really hard for you to envision like not being here after March 8th? And he was like, definitely. He's like, this is my team. This is guys that I'm bonding with. We're playing together. We're fighting in this fight together. Like, I don't want to quit. And he called it quitting, but they're not going to be completely far out of it in 7 days. That will be a situation. If they were like tanking and last in the West or close to that, and then I could see that being a conversation he'd want to have, because he loves playing playoff hockey. But he's such a team guy. He's such a big part of that room, and so I think to himself, like, just him saying that out loud, I'm sure that the players know that in itself, but I think it's probably reassuring, like, hey, a 3-time Cup champion is believing in this team and believing in this process and this group that they can do it. So let's see if they can go on a run here. But yeah, he has all the cards, right? He holds all the cards in the situation with a no move clause, and Guerin was eventually going to go up to him before the deadline if there were some suitors, but I think he wanted to get out of the way. Assuming they'll lose 5 in a row going to the deadline, that's something that maybe change. But I think overall, it's pretty safe to say that he wants to say he doesn't want to get traded.
And if Vegas Sportsbook, as of today, has even odds on it, Which way do you lean between Marc-Andre, Fleury, being a part of the Wild organization more from a front office or, even coaching perspective, or him actually coming back for another season with the Minnesota Wild?
It's a very good question, and I think we've all kind of assumed and thought that next year would be the start of the Wallstedt era in terms of a good combo with Philip Gustafsson, and that's very well could be the case. We don't know if Fleury wants to play next year. We don't know if he's very well decide after this year that, hey, this is it, and he knows when it's time, and he wants to get away. So I think until that door is officially closed, I think the Wild could be open to it. The problem is you got to see, where is Wallstedt, right? Is he overly ripe and ready to play? You don't want to just keep him down there just to keep him down there, right? But if we benefit from some more time, you could look at that. But I don't think there's going to be like a goalie trade in the next 2 weeks. But that's some of the decisions you have to make this summertime. If Fleury plays well down the stretch, says I want to play another year, and then all of a sudden you're like, you have decisions to make of, could you trade one of them? Do you keep them both? But I think the Wild would want to keep him in the organization at some point or fashion, and who better to be around a team and team culture and around goaltending? Like, hire him as a goaltending consultant and have him not to travel and go to all these games, right? Doesn't have to be a goaltending coach and go to 82 games, right? Or like whatever. He can kind of come in and work with, Iowa, can come work with the Wild, but I think having him as part of the team would be something that I think they would probably be open to.
Yeah. And I mean, do they even come up with like a new role entirely for him, like CVO, Chief Vibes Officer or something? He's literally just there to keep everyone happy and good spirits.
Chief Prank Officer or whatever. But
there we go.
Yeah. I mean, some teams have their own goaltending, not say consultant, but goaltending advisor or whatever that works across the whole entire organization, not Freddie Shabbat's job kind of thing. So, and you have to see what this guy wants to do if you're playing 20 years in the NHL. Does he want to go right back into hockey? Does he want to take some time with his young kids? A lot of things that have to be decided by Marc-Andre Fleury before we kind of already pencil him into a new job of his own. But for right now, the good news for the Wild fans is that he wants to stay, and he wants to be part of this tandem with Gustafsson that gets them in the playoffs. And then maybe a whole nother conversation and controversy if they get that far, who plays in each game, right?
Yeah.
We've been there before.
For sure. And so Fleury established more than likely staying. Who are you hearing could potentially be on the move? And again, we'll get into the trade deadline more next week, especially talking more league wide with it a little bit. But who for the Wild do you see kind of being tossed around right now?
Yeah, something that, colleague Mike Russo and I from The Athletic wrote in our Monday Insider column that, could the Duhaime and Dewar could be guys that potentially be moved before the deadline. Not because the Wild don't like these players, but because of you'll have Maroon and Foligno coming back. Khusnutdinov, we wrote in that story too, potentially could be signed to bring to North America in coming weeks. So Mason Shaw is ready to come back. And if you don't have Brandon Duhaime pending UFA as part of your plans for next year, and you think you might not qualify Connor Dewar as an RFA with Arbrights this summer, then that could something where Bill Guerin could work ahead and maybe get a pick or a player or a prospect or just make a move, because a lot of people at the deadline are looking for third, fourth line players, centers, guys with some grit. So I think I'm not sure they're not going to blow anybody away and like Blake Coleman and get a first round pick for him. But if you're going to lose them for nothing anyway in the summertime, and you have guys that can kind of step in, it's a way to kind of stealthily sell without selling off teams where you can't make the playoffs. So those are two names to watch. Zach Bogosian's hurt, another pending UFA, and Bill Guerin told us he's hoping or thinking about bringing him back next year. So I don't know if he would necessarily move, but Pat Maroon's a guy I think a lot of teams have interest in as soon as he's healthy, which he has that back surgery last month. And so he'll probably be back after the deadline playing wise, but that would be another option as far as if they're going to make any moves. I don't think they're going to be buyers or major buyers by any stretch. I think they'll just have some of their internal guys like a Marcus Foligno coming back would be another addition for them, and Maroon and obviously Bogosian.
Do you see a guy like Maroon potentially being on the move, just given his playoff pedigree, if there's not really an appetite to bring him back next year with some of the young blood that might be here? Like, or is it just, no, we're riding it?
No, I mean, I think it's fair. I think it's fair to look at him as a guy that can move because he has that pedigree. He's a kind of guy with his size, his hands, his experience, a typical kind of contender would want to have, and he wouldn't be a huge price, right? And the Wild have shown the last month and a half that they can win and go on a run. Not saying without him, but he hasn't been around, and they've had a good vibe and they've had good guys in the room. So if you don't think Pat Maroon's coming back next year, then that's another option. But they're not just going to fire sale and sell everybody because they need to have players in the lineup and guys get injured, and so they can't just give away all their depth and everything like that. But I think there are guys that if they get an intriguing offer, that could be on there. And you could also get a player back in those deals. So you could get Brandon Duhaime, trade him, and get a player. It won't be a superstar player, but you can get another depth player that you can add to your roster.
Perfect. And I know we'll probably talk about this even a little bit more next week, unless there's anything more imminent right now. But the deadline for Khusnutdinov to join, obviously, and actually be able to play out the remainder of the season is the trade deadline. Any word? Has there been any change, or is it still the expectation that it's not a matter of if, but more when?
We kind of laid it out in the story today on The Athletic, but he's still under contract technically in the KHL until April 30th. So they would have to work out something with Sochi or work out with his team there to bring him to North America and get out that contract early and sign his ELC and get rolling. So I don't think it's a matter of question whether there's interest from the Wild, which there is, or interest from Khusnutdinov, which there is. It's more so of anything that deals with Russia right now isn't a very easy transition or transaction. So I think if they can get some cooperation there, I think you'll see him come in and it's good for him to get settled, to figure things out. I think as Kirill Kaprizov said in our story, like he knows how hard it is to learn the language, to learn how to do anything in North America. And so he'd be a good bridge, and he's been texting with him, offering suggestions, and I'm sure he'll bring him along and help him get adjusted to where maybe if he plays a little bit here down the stretch, he could also just be ready starting in camp next year to be a real factor. So nothing is set in stone or guaranteed, but at least if you read the tea leaves, you'll see mutual interest in both sides in getting over here.
Seems fair. Okay. Well, maybe we shift gears then to the Gophers, where we actually have a bit of a rivalry grudge match this weekend. You being the alum of Michigan, Maize and Blue, and me just born and raised. I've cared more about Gopher hockey than I've cared about any professional hockey team, which has brought a lot of pain, but that's not important. What are we looking at here for this weekend, where the Gophers, obviously, as you'll hear in the interview coming up here with Jimmy and what we talked about last week with Oliver, obviously this is like gut check time. This is when you got to be playing your best hockey, get rounded out so that you're firing on all cylinders going into the postseason. Michigan is fighting for their lives. What do you expect coming into this matchup?
Well, obviously a lot's on the line, like you mentioned. I think if Michigan does sweep, they get to like number 3 seed, I think, in the tournament there. So they're not. This is a rare situation for both. Michigan, I think, is usually being up there in the standings. And I think Minnesota, who we talked to Oliver and Jimmy about being a little more underdogs going into the year based on who they lost in the offseason. But they have been playing some of their best hockey since the turn of the calendar year. Like Jimmy will allude to and talk about that more in our interview about kind of the growing pains that they had early on, the loss in Madison, the sweep there. So I think overall, this is a chance for them to use as kind of a springboard into what they hope is a tournament run like they had last year. And the fact that they have all these young defensemen playing so well, the fact that their top players are being their top players, Snuggerud and Moore and, obviously close in net. So this could be a good either confidence booster going into the tournament or, like you said, gut check time if it doesn't go as well on home ice.
And we've talked a lot already about where the Gophers are at personally. Like, where do you see Michigan? Because obviously both teams lost a lot of talent coming out of Frozen Four bids last year, but Michigan just seems a little bit more out of sorts, I'd say. Like, still playing solid hockey, but is the identity still there? Has it shifted a little bit? Like, what are you seeing from them?
Yeah, it's a tough one. I mean, sometimes programs lose star players, whether it's like Fantilli or Cooley, and are able to kind of come up there with the depth and step in and not be those guys, but kind of by committee get it done. And it seems like, Michigan has this year kind of worked around and trying to find its identity as a team and find guys that can step into those roles. And I don't think they necessarily scare you as much as they did last year. I was there in the Frozen Four, and so were you watching that tournament. And I thought they were a legitimate team that could win it. I don't think people are coming into this year or coming into the spring thinking Michigan's really scaring a lot of people. But anytime you have a program with that pedigree, and you have guys that are clearly talented and recruited that way to be difference makers, who knows what can happen. But I think this is why this weekend is really important for seeding purposes for both teams. Put them in the best position for a trip to the Frozen Four if they can possibly make it.
Fair enough. We'll have to wait and see this weekend. And again, big matchup for both teams for different reasons, but I think we all know every time these two come together, ever since the inception of the Big Ten hockey conference, these are games that you do not miss. Like, everyone should either be attending or turning on their TVs for this one. Coming next week, we'll talk a little bit more specifically about the state tourney. Again, just a fantastic holiday that I go out and celebrate every year. But section finals this week, getting everything wrapped up. Actually, a few that are in semifinals, but the one I have to shout out because they called me out last year. We have Elk River. Actually, maybe it was 2 years ago, but we have Elk River High School thumping the favorite from Section 8AA. Honestly, a lot of years they are in Moorhead, and that's one that, Joe, like, honestly, growing up, I always kind of pulled for them in the AA bracket. I played single A, so like I didn't have any horse in the race. They had awesome orange jerseys. Their mascot is the Spuds. Matt Cullen has his ties there, and it's just like one of those teams that's hard to hate. So I've always just kind of like vocally cheered for them. And I was lobbying pretty hard for them the other year, and Elk River actually beat them and upset them again. And I had like 4 different Elk River players like up in my mentions, like all in my face. And I'm like, you know what? You're right. I'm an Elk River fan now. We got the hashtag Elk Gang going. And I think it's still in my bio, even just being a ERHS super fan. So good for them. I hope they can pull off the win here and go to state so I can cheer for them proper. But it's exciting. I know you got your first taste of it last year. Anything like that stands out to you from your first viewing of the state tournament?
Well, this week would be my first one. Last year I was on the road.
Oh, you were on the road. Okay.
So I'm hoping to sneak in there and catch it myself and see what all the hype is about, because you see that place sold out for high school, which is unbelievable. So yeah, I'm looking forward to check out this week, and then we'll report back. But definitely another example. You see the videos online every year of the crowds midweek for state high school hockey. It's pretty incredible. As our guest the first 2 weeks could attest to, right? Oliver Moore last week, and Jimmy Snuggerud coming up next. For us, a really fun interview about his background, his family, legacy at Minnesota, his grandpa, who's at age 80 plus, was still skating and doing stuff like that. So how he developed his lethal shot, how that happened. So a lot of good stuff here in the interview. Really enjoyed it, and looking forward to having him back on the show, whether it's later this year or next year when he's part of the St. Louis Blues organization.
Perfect. And with that, let's just kick it over to the man himself. This interview with Jimmy Snuggerud is brought to you by our friends at Waggle Golf. Waggle Golf believes that what you wear on the course should reflect your individuality, who you are, where you're from, your hobbies, interests, and passions, all the stuff that makes you, well, you. That's why every design is inspired by the desire to create a piece of apparel that strikes a chord when you see it. That makes you say, wow, that was made for me. Because in a lot of ways, it was. Ready to get your waggle on? Head over to getyourwaggleon.com and use promo code SP10 to take 10% off your order. Pleased to be joined by one of us by way of Chaska, Minnesota, playing 1 year of high school hockey with Chaska High School before an early departure for the U.S. National Team Development Program. Now gold medalist at World Juniors and Hobey Baker contender for your Minnesota Golden Gophers, Jimmy Snuggerud. How are you doing, Jim?
I'm doing good. Good to be here. Thanks for having me on.
Absolutely. Great having you. I know, I'm sure you're already aware that we had your boy Oliver Moore on here last week, and I'm going to throw this one at you. We'll see if you do any better than him, but be honest. How long did it take you to see the Minnesota Wild logo was not just a nature scene?
I must have been like 6th or 7th grade when I went to a practice, maybe 5th grade. One of my buddies pointed it out to me, and it took me a little while to notice. But once I realized it, I haven't seen it different since.
Right. Yeah. Would it shock you if I told you that Oliver learned when he met with us?
No way. Yeah, it would shock. Actually, no, it really wouldn't. He's doesn't surprise me.
Did you have a favorite Wild player growing up? I know his was like Parise. He had a Parise jersey. Did you have one that you kind of stood out and kind of watched?
I was a huge Penguins fan, so I liked watching the Penguins a lot, but I really liked watching Koivu. I think his shootout move was my favorite. Every time they go into a shootout, I'd love to see his forehand backhand deke and go nuts when he scored.
Oh, Jimmy.
I'm sure you tried that one too. I'm sure you've tried that one before, haven't you?
Yeah, when I was younger, I'd go on my backyard rink and try and go forehand backhand.
So, Jimmy, I actually grew up a Penguins fan too. Like, I was in that weird bubble where growing up, there was no team here and Lemieux was just kind of really good at hockey.
Yeah.
We had a fan ask on Twitter when Joe Smith threw out that we were going to be doing the interview and asked the significance of number 81. And please tell me it has something to do with Phil Kessel.
It doesn't, no. I've kind of been around 9 my whole life, and obviously when I was coming in at my 18 year, I was number 9, and then we weren't sure if Walker was going to come back, but I didn't choose number 9, so 18 was taken too, so I just 81 because 8 + 1 is 9.
Pretty unique though. It's a unique number, like either college or NHL. So
yeah, no, it is. Once I chose it, and I realized it was Kessel all around, and obviously I love Kessel. I love watching him play. So
legend.
Yeah.
Well, congratulations, obviously, on World Junior. I know talking to guys who've been through it, they call it one of their most memorable experiences of their life, until you get to the NHL, of course. But the moment that kind of went viral, I guess, for you was kind of the first goal against Finland, I believe, in the semis where you guys were down a little bit. And what do you remember about that moment leading up to it? I don't know if one of your teammates, I heard, gave you a little bit of a pep talk beforehand, or like how did that kind of get set up?
Yeah, I remember we worked on it a lot, kind of the whole way there of kind of me being in that spot and hopefully taking, a couple of timers. We made some good team plays and pre-tournament plays, but we didn't get one in the tournament really. And before the draw, Gabriel kind of came up and it was like, we haven't had one. Seen one of your one-timers tournament, like put this one through the net and then trust the crowd. So, luckily it came to me, and I didn't trust the crowd because, we were obviously down 2-0 and it was a late goal. But, I was, fortunate enough to go in.
Every championship's different. Everything aftermath is always different. What's your most vivid memory of the celebration after you guys won the gold? Like, is it a moment with your family, like your dad and grandpa, or was it a moment with like some of your teammates, like at a team celebration at a restaurant, or what's the most vivid memory you have from after you guys won?
Yeah, I think just kind of being in the hotel with all the families there after that last game. We had our hotel kind of rented out for all the parents to come and hang out, and kind of just seeing everyone's family there and being with your own, mom and dad. And you obviously, sees all these other guys' parents there. It's so cool to just, be with them after that tournament because, more than half of those guys in the room lost to Sweden our 18 years. So to see the, the happiness and the joy in that room, to know that we won, and then just hanging out with the guys all that night was super special. We didn't get a bunch of time together because, guys had flights at 3 and 4 in the morning. But, to be in that room, to be with those guys during that time was so special.
Who was all there with you? Who was all there, like family and family friends wise, that got you to be there for it?
Yeah, so my mom, dad, and one of my sisters was there, and then my agents came for the final game, and it was cool happy to see them too. But my parents and my sisters, they were there throughout the whole tournament, and they were watching. So everyone's families had a lot of people there, so it was cool to see everyone there.
Talk to me about the electricity in the locker room after the games, just chanting, "Oh, mama, don't you cry."
Yeah, I remember Rut McGroarty did it, and he was a little nervous he was going to get it wrong. But I remember our 17-year, we had spring training or something, and after each workout, it was like a couple hour workout. We were getting bagged. We would run around the parking lot just like screaming that chant as loud as we could when it was raining out or whatever. Go for a run. Guys would jump out of the line, and we'd do that. So he had it down to a T, and to do it in the locker room after winning that World Junior gold medal was obviously really cool.
That's awesome. And personal selfish one here for me, but I was actually recently just had my first kid, born on the 28th of December, and I'm sitting there with this crappy like Wi-Fi, some kind of bootlegged video of you guys playing against the Swiss as I'm sitting there waiting for all this to go down. And it took you a whopping 13 minutes to put up a Hattie. Like, what is that like?
Yeah, I think, shots were just going in. It was fortunate. One went off the helmet. I missed a breakaway chance right before. Like, pucks were kind of just bouncing my way, honestly. And, that happens sometimes. And, Cut made some pretty good passes to me, won some draws. Rut was there winning the battles. And, once, the shots are going in, they're going in. And I think just kind of, to see them and do it, with the line mates next to me was so cool. And to do it in the World Juniors was obviously cool. But, I think we took it to the Swiss the whole game. And that was one of our team's, best games.
Yeah, Jimmy, I was there with you guys in the Frozen Four last year, following you guys around, and could tell how special or tight-knit that group, it probably still is, even the guys that are gone now. Just curious, what was that flight home like for you in terms of, you had a lot of guys you probably knew Brock was leaving, you might have had an idea guys might be like, what was the emotions of that flight home and conversations like with the guys of kind of both reliving kind of the run you guys have had as a group and what might come next?
Yeah, it was a tough flight, obviously. Obviously guys were leaving. We were in Tampa, and, Nazi could have stayed there in Tampa. Obviously they were playing, I think it was a couple days later with Toronto, but, he came home with us and spent a day with us, and, he decided to sign at the end of that day. But that last day with him and our team was pretty special because, that flight home was quiet, but that next day we were all with each other, hanging out at the house and kind of just being with each other. So I'd say it was obviously a really tough flight, but to be with the guys the day after, and Fabe signed that morning, but he was on a flight that afternoon, and cool state, and obviously signed later in the next year. But to be with the younger guys and know that we all have a chance to come back for a second year and do this again is obviously really cool, and shows how tight knit of a group we were last year and even are this year with all the new freshmen.
Yeah. Go ahead, Joe.
That heard a lot about the hockey house, and you guys watched a lot of games there in NHL, college. Just like, what was that day like? Or when you get back and all together, were you guys just like reminiscing? Were you guys, playing video games like you always did? Or like, what do you guys do to kind of decompress and maybe your last dance together, I guess?
Yeah. I would say guys were decompressing. Guys were just pretty sad, honestly, because, that was, one of the best teams all of us have played on. To just be with each other, though, I think was a really special moment. I think we were just kind of hanging out, playing bags, making burgers and brats like we normally do there. I think, and obviously didn't change much as people. I think it's just the sadness that, brat was. It was all motivation, honestly, though. Like, you could tell the day after those guys wanted, to come back even more and win it this year.
And what's it like now going from a team last year where I mean, expectations couldn't have been higher, right? Like, you were part of one of the best lines that I've seen in college hockey. Team was so highly touted. And now this year, still a top 10 team, but obviously the expectations aren't quite the same. But we're playing in Minnesota this year. Like, what is it like now with the team? Like, is it talked about a lot?
Yeah, no, I wouldn't say a ton, but when it needs to be brought up, it does. I think our expectations were so high at the beginning of the year, and then we obviously come in first weekend and sweep St. Thomas, and we're ranked number 1 in the country. I'd say our egos were probably a little too high to start the year. Guys were coming back thinking we have the same team again, and then we get swept by Wisconsin, we get pushed down in the rankings all year, and then Christmas kind of goes by, and we've came back to the second half as such a stronger team. I think our leadership roles and our leadership meetings have been so much stronger, and to a point where, we know that we can play against any team. And, we brought it these past few weekends. I think Friday against Notre Dame was our last little skid we've had. And I think that's the last time we're going to learn from these things. And I think, we're only up from here, and we have such a strong team and a strong group, and our defensive core has been great for us. I think our forwards, need to work a little bit better defensively on that side, but our offensive side has been huge. And then obviously Closer has been great in that all year. He's been a stud, but I think just that leadership part that we have this year is where I think we have more older guys and more leaders on our team.
You mentioned leadership. I mean, now that you lose a guy like Faber and Lacombe and Johnson, a lot of, guys who've been there for a while, like anytime that happens, there's always maybe some younger guys or maybe surprising voices that kind of pop up that may not have had the opportunity before. Who are some guys who have kind of stepped in? I'm sure you have been one of those guys too, having your stature in the program there. Like, who have been guys that kind of stepped into some of those roles that were vacated by guys who left?
I'd say there's a lot of guys who have stepped in their roles. I think, I've obviously done a little bit of that, but there's been so much more from our younger guys. I think, John Middleset has been one of those guys who steps in. He doesn't play every game, but I mean, man, when he plays, he's going and he's buzzing. He's such a energizer bunny. I mean, that whole line of, Middleset, Clark, Pino, or Strobe, I mean, whoever's playing, I mean, they're 100% every single game, and their voices on our bench. And then obviously we have the old line of Nelson, Brodzinski, and Evers, and they're, they've been voices their career here, and, they're going to stick with that all year about, honing us in on short shifts and what. And I think Oliver Moore, as being a freshman, most guys don't really have huge voices, but I mean, man, he's so determined and so motivated to be the best leader he can possibly be. And, he shows it every day.
Yeah, he also really spoke highly of what John Middlestat does. Like, he was kind of the under the radar guy for him. I am curious though, looking back to last year as well. Obviously, you've got a great relationship with Logan Cooley, and I'm sure it's a little bittersweet to watch him leave and go start his pro career. But talk to us, like, what is that relationship like? And I got to put you on the spot. Like, what was your pitch to get him to flip his commitment and go to the Gophers?
Yeah, I think our relationship it's good. It stays the same. Obviously, we still communicate with each other, and we'll hang out this summer when he comes home. And it's it's really good to hear about him. And obviously, when he signed, I was no more than happy. I was super happy for him and his career ahead. And he's obviously been doing good, and he's been playing up to his almost standards. I think he makes plays so well and he does things so well. But when he first committed here and switched his commitment, I think it was kind of easier for him. I don't think he necessarily wanted to go to Notre Dame super badly. I think he was kind of deciding between here in North Dakota, and luckily he chose here. But I think just kind of that, to get him to come here, he knew that how many NHL players come out of this college, and how highly mature as people too. And obviously he sent that on to his younger cousin who plays at NTDP too. So it's nice to get that word down and keep bringing those good recruits in.
Jim, I noticed you have a legacy there, your family with the Gophers, your dad and your grandfather. Was there ever other schools that you even looked at? I don't know. I think your dad probably encouraged you to kind of at least see what was out there. Was there any other schools that were, I'm sure, after you there?
Yeah, I think my dad encouraged me to check everything out. He never really forced me to go to Minnesota. He didn't care much that I came here or not. He just kind of wanted me to do whatever. But I think I liked. I didn't go visit a lot of places. I liked Boston. I liked the idea of Boston and North Dakota. Minnesota, and then obviously Wisconsin and Granado's in there because, he's such a good coach. But I think it just kind of came down to the practice habits that I would create here. Going against practice every day against Faber, Nyes, and Lacombe and Johnson. I mean, I got so much better last year in just that aspect alone. And then, I was really fortunate enough to play with 2 NHL players. So I think it all just kind of came down to me being in the right spot at the right time. And it kind of worked out for me.
Plus, I think we heard that your grandpa told you wanted to go to Minnesota yesterday, right? He wanted you there, right? he had
a little different opinion on it. He wanted me to go to Minnesota so he could watch.
Just tell us a little about him and his influence on your life here. I mean, I saw him like skating at age 80 plus, or still doing some probably beer league skates there. Just what was it like kind of watching him growing up, and what kind of influence has he had on you as a player?
Yeah, I think a huge influence. I think growing up, me and my cousin used to go skate with him and his buddies, and when he was probably around 75, 80. But I think to just kind of skate with him and be on the ice with him and all his old buddies kind of really grew that love for the game for me, to know that you can do it at such a late age, and those guys would hang out and kind of be in that team atmosphere so late. So I think just kind of that part of hockey grew on me so quickly from a young age, because I would just go out there with those guys and kind of see what he had to do. And obviously he still comes to basically every game. He's sitting up there and I go see him after the game. And it's so cool to see that, he's still rolling along and loves to watch hockey. He doesn't care about the noise, even though he's, old and it's probably pretty loud for him, but he just kind of loves being in the atmosphere.
Does he have a more active celebration than your dad does during games? Is he a little louder? Or I know your dad's kind of like the nonchalant, like he just had a hat trick in 13 minutes. I'm going to sit on my hands here.
I don't know. Honestly, I've never really asked if he does anything. I highly doubt that he does anything, because he's, pretty laid back guy. So
everybody talks about your shot. Of course, it's your trademark. It's one of your biggest strengths. And I was curious how it developed, because I covered the Lightning for a long time in Tampa, and Steven Stamkos would always tell me that he didn't have a good shot when he was a young kid. He was small, the way he was built. He was a good skater, but he had to really go to shooting coach, a shooting academy every day, shooting 400 or 500 shots just to build that strength and that technique. How was yours developed at a young age? Like, how did you kind of refine that and build into what it is today?
Yeah, I think it was kind of just the repetitive, notions of shooting the puck. I think my dad kind of emphasized on me early, as, aggressive shot always helps. I think, he obviously played at the highest levels. He played against guys who had good shots, and he would just kind of, I remember I got like a shooting tarp in my garage pretty young, and I would be in there a lot. And then I went on to my dad's school at Breakaway Academy. It's a hockey school out in, it was in Chaska at the time. And I remember, 5th through 8th grade, just kind of, we got on the ice for an hour and a half every day, just before and after practice, trying to be the first one, last one off the ice, just ripping pucks whenever I could during the skate, just shooting. And I think that's where it kind of grew mostly, is just the repetitiveness of shooting. And, over the summer I was going in the shooting room at the Chaska Community Center and just kind of being in the shooting room whenever I could. I think during COVID was kind of a bigger impact too, because I got to, shoot pucks in my garage a lot. And that's when, it kind of grew for me mostly. But I think that's where it basically grew. I don't think there's a lot to it. I think it's just, kind of being in that atmosphere of shooting.
Was there a moment where you realized this is different? Like, not like a Fulton Reed, like shoot the puck through the net kind of thing, but like a moment where you, in a youth game or something like that, where people notice like, hey, this is not just a usual regular shot?
Yeah, I think maybe my first year Bantams, I remember taking like a one-timer, and it was one of like the hardest shots I ever took, and it kind of just, it went in and went bar down, and it's when I kind of realized, like, man, I can kind of shoot the puck. I need to keep growing on this so I can use it in, later games, so I can, mature with this shot and keep using it. So I think that's kind of when I realized that I had a decent shot. I mean, I just decided to keep on working it from there. But
nice. And how does that shot translate into, as Oliver Moore says, you being a stick in golf? He kind of tagged you right away as being the best golfer on the team. Who would you actually tag besides yourself, though, as being the best golfer, if you can't pick you?
Probably Mikey Kester.
Yeah.
We go nose and nose. I mean, every time we're on the golf course, it's such a close battle, and it's, I mean, whenever we get a really close match. It gets pretty heated really quickly. But, I mean, he's good. He's a good golfer. I know he just got new irons too, so I'll see how those things work.
Nice.
Everyone talks about, obviously, from NICE, everybody says you have any NHL shot already, no matter if you're playing in college or not. And you saw these other guys go through it already, the experience. And they always say that, the only person that can know if you're ready is that individual player themselves. Just like, do you feel like you're ready to take the next step? And, at some point here, this summer, turn pro, whenever that is?
Yeah, I think I'm kind of living the moment now, and I'm not super ready to make that decision yet. I think as a player, once that time comes, I'll be able to decide it on the spot. I think right now, I still obviously I really don't know, and it's kind of weird to say, but I honestly have no idea. Like once that day comes where it comes to my mind, and my gut's telling me the right thing, what to do, then I'll go with that. But right now, I mean, I love being in college, and I love playing college hockey with all of my best friends. So,
yeah, and
let's put it this way. Like NICE said, he came back for a reason. He came back because he wanted to be a little more mature. He wanted to do certain things. When you decided to come back, what were some things on your checklist? You said, "Hey, I want to do this." Other than, of course, winning a national championship was a big motivator, I'm sure. But what were the things you said, "Hey, this is something I want to work on in my game to kind of get myself ready"?
Yeah, I think be a leader and be a more detailed player. And I think last year I was kind of got away from details quite a bit. I think it was kind of more producing focus, whereas I needed to mature as a person and realize that this is a team, and where we could possibly not be as good. So I need to mature as a player, and hopefully win a national championship with this team. So I think the leadership part has gone really well. Just kind of bringing in all the freshmen, and the details in my game have improved so much since last year. Just kind of the small little things, the small little aspects of my game.
Awesome. And want to be cognizant of your time here too, Jimmy. I know we're running up on it here. We do have for sure our Waggle Golf question to wrap things up. Do you have a minute to talk a little bit about just the draft experience as a whole back in 2022 and what it's, really just soaking the entire moment in?
Yeah, it was really, really cool. I think it all started, obviously that draft morning, just kind of wanting the day to go by quicker so you can be sitting down in your chair at the draft. But once it came, it was really special moment. And then obviously Slafkovsky went first, and the whole rink was going pretty wild because Wright was predicted first since he was 13 years old. So to see that to start off the day was pretty crazy. And then the trades happen, and then a couple of guys, your teammates get picked, and you see them walking down, they'll give them a hug, and you're so happy for them as a person, and see them walking up on the stage, and then you hear your name get called, and it's like, well, like this is happening right now. So you hug your family members, and then you walk down the stairs, and you're kind of blacked out, obviously, and there's nothing you can really do but smile, and then you shake Gary Bettman's hand, and it's like it's all kind of a blur. But you go up and shake all for me it was the Blues staff hand, and then you go down and do all the media stuff, and it's really hard to kind of take in the moment because everything's happening so fast, and then by the snap of your fingers, the night's kind of over, and you're hanging out with all your buddies at wherever we were. But it was really nice to just kind of be in that moment. We all got picked that night, and obviously some guys didn't, and I was so happy to see them get picked the next day too.
Was there other teams? I know you interviewed probably with a bunch of them. Was there another team you're like, oh, this team picked a couple of picks before St. Louis said they were to take you, and there are teams you thought might have been in the mix there before?
Yeah, I think it was kind of anywhere in that 20 to 25 range is kind of where I thought I was going. I thought, maybe Minnesota could have taken me at 19, but I know I talked with them at the combine, and obviously I wasn't sure how I was going to go, but I think where I got picked, I'm so happy, and I'm so fortunate enough to be with the Blues, and it's a great time to be with them right now.
What was the weirdest interview question you had leading up to the draft?
Maybe Montreal. It's not super weird. They just asked me what animal I am on and off the ice. I gave a really normal answer. I don't know. I just think I said I can't remember, like a lion on the ice or something. Can't remember what I said for off the ice, but it was just like normal questions all day. And then you walk into Montreal's and they ask you what animal you'd be. It kind of just catches you off guard.
Nice.
Some fans wanted us to ask you too, what's your impressions of St. Louis as a city, being there like that? What were your overall thoughts on the town itself?
Yeah, it's cool. I mean, to go to Dev Camp, we went to a ball game and we went go-karting and paintball too. So I think I really like the town. I like the city. I'm kind of a big baseball guy too, so I love going to the Cardinals game and watching that. It's super hot though, which is kind of the same as Minnesota, but it is really hot there. So, we stocked up on water. But I do like the city a lot.
One more from me, from fans who wanted us to ask, other than you, what about one of your teammates for the Gophers you played with or at the World Juniors has the best shot?
Oh, I mean, I have to go with Gauthier. I think his shot is, above all remarks, it's pretty amazing. Just kind of his release point, and he shoots in every situation too, I think. So, he obviously scored against Finland to win it too on that power play. But, he's had that shot since he was a 17 too at NTDP. So.
Nice. All right, we can close out here on this one then, Jimmy. It's our Waggle Golf question. GetYourWaggleOn.com. Take 10% off that with promo code SP10. Jimmy, who is in your dream golf foursome, and bonus points if you pick a course?
Yeah, I gotta go TPC Scottsdale for the course. I play that on my Xbox a lot, so I really like it. I'm going to go Jack Nicklaus, Gary Player, and Tiger Woods. I think those would be pretty sick to play with those three. Just kind of learn from them.
Which one of them are you riding on the cart with?
Ooh, I would go Nicklaus. I would like to, hear about all of his tournaments, and I think he took second in a lot of tournaments too. So I'd be here to learn from him and learn how he kind of regrouped from all those losses and got all those wins.
Nice.
Yeah, Oliver picked 4 guys, so he's gonna be the caddy, I think, for his foursome since he picked 4 people. So
yeah, you understood the assignment.
Yeah.
Well, thanks so much for joining us. I know it's kind of a quote unquote bye week for you guys, but I know you're still busy, so appreciate you doing it and looking forward to talking to you as the Big Ten tournament comes up soon. And of course, what you guys are dreaming about playing in potentially the Frozen Four here in St. Paul.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Awesome. What a guy, huh? Thank you again so much, Jimmy Snuggerud, for jumping on. I don't even know what more we can say here, Joe. Delivered on everything that I'm sure most fans expected.
No, absolutely. Everything from your questions of how I persuaded Logan Cooley to come to Minnesota to, my questions how he developed his shot and how his family really shaped him, with his dad and his grandpa. I thought that was a really cool anecdote about his grandpa kind of telling him that he needed to be Minnesota Gopher and stat like yesterday. But I think it's also a mature player who took advantage of another year in school, which really improved the way he not only played on the ice, but became more of a leader. And I think details of the game, like he said, that'll make him more ready for the NHL. Kind of like what Matthew Dyes did, and look what he's doing with Toronto Maple Leafs. So good to have him on, and love to go to that alumni golf tournament this summertime and see all these Gophers and former Gophers go at it, because apparently all of them can really hit it. So thanks to Jimmy for coming on.
Awesome. Well, let's get into what we've been sipping on this whole episode then. Here from great friends, Barrel Theory Beer Company, we have a beer called Off the Hop Rope. That's right. They always have their fun play on words or really cool pop culture or even like movie quote beer names. There's some incredible ones. We actually went down the list the first time we had Timmy Johnson on with us on the Soda Pod. But this one here, delicious, really easily approachable for me. Like, it's a hazy pale ale. So coming in just under 6%, but it's just a very, very approachable, almost a gateway beer to IPAs if you're someone that's kind of on the fence about the whole concept. And works great for our audio guy here, Isha. Big wrestling fan, if anyone didn't know. Get up in his mentions about that. But I don't know, Joe, what do you think about your first taste here of Barrel Theory?
Oh, it's really good. Like, I think I enjoyed last week's beer too, the District 5. And like you mentioned, it's just a very smooth, approachable beer. Like, feels like you'd have more than you probably should of it, it's with easily it goes down. But yeah, like, I love IPAs, especially sitting outdoors. And now it's a perfect weather to crack one and have one on the patio, just because it's that kind of weather right now. So, I like it, and it is kind of a gateway to IPAs if you're not a big IPA person, where it's not strong and completely hoppy, to where you can clearly tell this is an IPA. So not overwhelm you with it, but a good spring, early summer beers, it looks like.
Yeah, and the other place that it goes great, everybody, Xcel Energy Center. That's right. Barrel Theory is really the only true craft beer representation at the X. They have Raindrops on tap at, I believe it's the burger stand on the 100 level. Gosh, let's say that's roughly like the 114-ish section. You might correct me if I'm wrong there, but even better is the Crowler du jour. That's right. Full crowlers of Barrel Theory at section 106. I make sure that's my first stop whenever I'm attending a game. But anyone that does go out there, whether it's Raindrops or the Crowler, if you get there on time, let us know what your thoughts are. Tag us in any of the photos online. But I couldn't be a better advocate of their offering at the X. Everyone likes their McGolden. It's great. But get one of these in just for a little extra something to kick off the night.
Yeah, especially when you're spending a little money on these beers, might as well get more bang for your buck there, a little more pop. You can Golden pretty much anywhere. So nice to have a little bit of change of pace, and especially kind of a pregame one to get you going.
100%. Might have some cool things in the works here with Barrel Theory as well, coming in the form of some interesting segments moving forward. But for now, we'll keep a pin in that until anything's official. Right now, let's kick it over then, Joe. Wrapping things up in the final segment, what's going on with The Athletic? What do we have for recent articles that have dropped, or any upcoming that we want to hit on here and drive the folks towards?
Absolutely. Well, I think everybody probably knows who follows The Athletic. We had that Monday column called the Weekly Wild Insider. Mike Russo and I combined a lot of news, notes, analysis kind of thing. So that was the one where we mentioned Khusnutdinov and Kirill Kaprizov bonding and potentially working together as he comes over eventually. And the fact that Duhaime and Duhaime might be on the move by the trade deadline. Had a note there on Marcus Foligno. Congratulations to him and his wife. Had their third baby last week. Another girl, a big girl dad there. Middle name Janice, to pay homage to his late mother, who lost her battle with cancer. So very cool stick tap to her for that. And Mason Shaw, people love hearing Mason Shaw. Will be a guest on our show eventually here coming up. But I think people want to focus on the trade deadline the next couple of weeks. We'll probably be writing about. We'll have some trade tiers coming up later this week. Me and Mike looking at who might be moved from the Wild perspective. We'll do a little mailbag for our insider next week. So we'll be sending out some tweets about that to get to your questions. So feel free to hit me up on Twitter. Any questions you want to have answered for that one. And we had something fun run. Hopefully you guys all read it and saw it on Tuesday morning. Annual player poll. Talked about 24 different Wild players on a lot of fun topics. Basically a chance for them to kind of rip on each other playfully, much as they could. Best dressed, worst dresser, who's always late, who doesn't pick up the tab when they go to a restaurant, which there are many guilty parties apparently in this group. But I'm sure you felt bad for poor Brendan Duhaime, who won several categories you probably didn't want to win. Like worst dressed, didn't pick up the tab, and I don't know, my favorite or least favorite is guy you wouldn't want to let date your daughter. So he was he hung with it and took it right. And as players told us as we were doing it, you don't rip on a guy and do these things if you don't really love him and don't really care. In the fellowship sort of the Rink's homage to that, they definitely had some fun with each other on who was best and who was not. And there was a lot of fun debates talking to like Zuccarello about who was the best soccer player pregame, and he said he was, and Kirill was like, BS, man, blah, 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 and they went back and forth. So you definitely see different sides of players when you do those kind of questions, because they all have a story to tell about each other, and they all care enough to give thoughtful answers, like who would be the best GM or who would be the best coach and broadcaster. Were some interesting answers I thought in that poll too. Goligoski getting the nod for GM.
Okay.
Foligno for broadcaster. One player told me he could talk all day, and he has to look for it. So Make sure to look up that if you get a chance, because we did a lot of work on that one over the course of a few months to talk to each player and ask them 17 questions about their teammates. So something to pick up and check out going forward. But yeah, the next couple of weeks in the Athletic will be a lot of trade deadline news and notes and analysis, and Mike will be on the road in Arizona and Colorado, and I'll be here working the phones, and both of us combining this the most comprehensive trade deadline coverage. We didn't think it'd be busy last year, and there were much of trades. So this year could be really fascinating when in the middle ground of selling and buying. So keep a lookout for that.
Nice. And I will defend Brandon Duhaime a little bit here. Winning worst dressed, when I'm pretty sure this season Marc-Andre Fleury has dressed him like half the games just by default with his pranks. So I think that's a little unfair, but no, awesome article. As we record, it's dropping tomorrow, so I'm excited to read it. But everyone, as this drops, go check it out. Maybe give one teaser then on it too, Joe. What was the biggest surprise to you? You don't even have to necessarily go into details, but like, which category were you most shocked by the responses?
Some of them were easy, like the best dressed one kind of thing. Favorite Twin Cities athlete that wasn't a Wild player was a pretty close call, whether it's a Vikings or a Twins, or got some old school names in that list as well. Trying to think of a fun one that was different. I think like who spends the most time in the gym and the weight room, and I think you'll be surprised about who that might be.
Everyone wrote in Jaromir Jagr.
And might be the same guy who won the category of who would be the guy teammate you let date your daughter. So nice guy. So check that out. A lot of fun, and we'll do it again next year. But when you get 24 players, different thoughts on stuff, it most obnoxious in the group chat. That's a good one too. So, and if they do, they should do a poll for athletic writers too. It'd be a lot of fun for us to do that about each other.
God, yeah, we'll never do that on the Soda Pod. If we had a poll like that for all of our contributors, it'd go the wrong direction.
Go sideways.
Yeah. Well, no, that's awesome. Well, that is a wrap then, everybody. Next week, tune back in, as we've alluded, NHL Trade Deadline coverage, State Tourney Primer, and our interview that we've got queued up for this week with Taylor Heisey of Team Minnesota in the PWHL. Thank you to those of you tuning in on Google, Spotify, and Apple Podcasts. Folks, best thing you can do for us this week is give us a 5-star review on iTunes, Apple Podcast. We did just hit 1,000 subscribers this past week as well on YouTube, and you all rock. For those that haven't yet, please do subscribe and check out the channel for anything from, clips from these interviews that we keep bringing you, beer reviews, and we've even got prospect highlight reels dropping from resident prospect guru Spoked Z. But signing off here, Scott alongside Joe Smith of The Athletic for yet another installment here. I guess technically the first one where we said it, of Fellowship of the Rinks. You stay classy, State of Hockey.